for their thousands of years of care for this land, and I feel very privileged to work, live and play on the land. I welcome all of you, and I thank our trustee candidates for not only being willing to put their names forward, but also to attend the forum tonight. So thank you to Kirsten Van Skip, Scott Randolph, Maureen Mason, Jacqueline Miller, Rob Hill and Dale Lawson. I'd also like to introduce you to Zach Pollard, Jonathan Dick, and outside is Sarah Campitelli. They are all members of, not all the members, but they are some of the members of our executive board, and it's been a combined effort to put this event together. So I really appreciate what they've done. Zach will have a roving mic, and Jonathan will explain about that later. And I'd like to have Jonathan come up here because he's going to be our moderator and he will explain how the forum will proceed. Thank you.
Thanks, Izzy. And I'll thank the school district as well for providing the space for this forum and for recording and hopefully live streaming it. Yes, we've got the thumbs up. It should be live streamed, so people should be able to watch it live. And also it'll be found on the school district's YouTube channel afterwards as well. So yeah, we're going to be starting with a series of questions that we've elicited from our membership, from teachers and other staff from QP within the district to give the candidates a chance to respond. And then also we'll be taking questions from the audience. If you have other questions that you'd like to ask that haven't been addressed or that you just want to hear the responses. So we're just going to ask the candidates in ever-varying order. So it's totally randomized. Mr. Pollard here, who's teaching computing science this semester, set up a random generator to generate random series of numbers. Yes. So you will hopefully never be following the same person and also taking turns starting and all that.
For the last 30 or 40 years, that's pretty much the focus of my life. It started as a classroom teacher, and then it worked from there to work with teachers at the university and teacher ed program, and then with the BCTF. And all of those experiences have informed me in a way that I think is valuable to a district that I know is going to go through some pretty dramatic changes in the next little while. And I have 4 grandchildren in Powell River in school, so I'm pretty heavily invested.
Thanks, Maureen. Next up is Scott.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, really, it's a willingness to serve in the community. As a Rotarian, we have a motto: service above self, and
message saying the YouTube link.
Like everyone here, I have children in the school system as well. I have 2 at Edgehill Elementary and a 3-year-old that's begging me to go to kindergarten. And I look at what's happened. You know, enrollments have been up at least for 6 years now, every year, and we're crunched for space. You know, Edgehill is a good example. It's at 180% capacity. You know, and they're using 5 portables to house classes in a building that was built in 1955. So we've got aging infrastructure. I think my experience in governance, I've served on a number of boards provincially and locally, and I think I can bring some experience to the table. I know the budgeting process well as being a director with the city. So I think I have something to give, and as I said, I'd like to serve my community in the best way possible.
Thank you, Scott. Next is Kirsten.
Okay, thank you. I'm super nervous and out of my comfort zone. Well, I'm running because I believe public education is essential to a healthy, prosperous, and just society. And like other folks have said, I'm just wanting to serve my community this way. Yeah, I have qualitative research skills. I come as an advocate and an experienced, compassionate collaborator. I think these skills are relevant to the critical moment we're in as a community and the future and current work needed to support and elevate the youth of the region. Thank you.
Thanks, Kirsten. Next, we have Rob.
Similar, I have 4 kids of my own, 2 of who attend Westview, and when a by-election was called in 2021, I really wanted to get involved because I am a graduate of this education system here in SD47, and I see the value that education, public education, has on my kids, and so that was one of the big reasons why I want to run again. I think a few folks have probably seen, like, I value students, and I want to put students first, and that's what's really important to me. We have a diversity of learners in our district, and students who come from different socioeconomic backgrounds who all deserve equity and justice when it comes to education. So that's why I ran.
Thanks, Rob. Next is Dale.
Thanks, Jonathan. For me, I was encouraged to run in 2018 when I worked for United Way by people that I trust and respected. And in my work with United Way, I worked at the Volunteer Center and then moved into my role as Executive Director. And what I was able to learn is that volunteerism and giving back to the community are paramount in creating a fabric of a sense of community and connection that we all need. So for me, giving back to the community goes a long ways back. I believe wholeheartedly in the foundation that the public education system provides for our kids. I went to school here. Both of my kids grew up here, went to the public education system here. And I believe that it's our job to support students in all that they will face in their future. And the way that we do that, is really understanding the whole child. And I think that with my experiences through volunteerism, I was a volunteer in schools, I helped with breakfast programs, I did community events, I did one of my favorite projects, the Destination Imagination, and what I learned was all students need to be supported, and that's what inspired me to run originally in 2018.
Thank you. And finally, Jacqueline.
Well, I think I just got more nervous going last, but I too was elected in the by-election in 2021, and I feel like I just spent the last 18 months kind of learning the job, and so I feel like now's the time to implement the things that I've learned. In my daily life, I'm a child protection supervisor with the Ministry of Children and Family Development, and so my focus is always on the most vulnerable children and youth in this community, and so that is my focus and my number one reason for wanting to be on the board. Thank you.
Great, thanks. Well, that's pretty smooth. I think we already have a board that can work together and take turns. That's a good start. So some of you have already mentioned this, but we'll give you a chance to expound a bit with the next question. So how some of your previous work experiences or experiences in life have prepared you for the work of a trustee? And if you need me to repeat the question when it gets to you, please let me know. But yeah, how has your previous work and other experience prepared you for the work of a trustee? We'll start with Scott this time.
One second last time. No, it's okay. I've got a diverse background, but I have worked in community development for the last 17 years now, so I've had the joy of partnering with a lot of different organizations in this community and elsewhere to get things done, and that's the only building team atmospheres like that is really the best way of achieving any goals. My professional background also, as I mentioned previously, I'm I'm well versed in the budgeting process, understand the management of money and resources, and how to put them towards or get the best bang for your buck. So I understand that. I have been, as I mentioned, I've served on a number of different organizations. I was the longest serving chair of the BC Economic Development Association, which is a provincial organization which we built into a membership of 500 professionals across the province, and which now provides professional development opportunities for those professionals. My time's up, sorry.
That's great, thank you. Next, we'll go with Rob.
Well, my Bachelor of Arts is in Political Science, where I studied Indigenous politics and resurgence and disability politics. After that, I interned with the BC NDP caucus in Victoria for 6 months, then was hired by the caucus to work for various MLAs. I eventually found my way back home to Powell River, where I currently work for Nicholas Simons, our MLA, and have sat on numerous boards in Victoria and in Powell River. And then, having been elected in the by-election in 2021, I am learning. A year and a half goes by quick, and so that experience that I brought, I've sat on so far our Joint Management Committee, Labor Negotiations, BCE, Social Action and Planning Advisory Committee, and had a really great opportunity to sit on our SOCHI committee this year. All skills that I think I would suit me well in this position again.
Thanks, Rob. Next is Jacqueline. Not last this time.
So, like I said, my background is in child protection. I was a frontline child protection worker for 20 years before I became the supervisor here. As part of that role, I've sat on many committees in Powell River. Early years, Family Safety Committee, Committee to Action Team, there's so many, the Poverty Reduction Group, currently working with Clement on their child welfare reform. I was a PAC mom as soon as my eldest, who's now 16, entered school, and so I was on PAC, and I was the PAC president at Westview and the district PAC president before I was elected in 2021. So I feel like that's given me a kind of a solid community understanding that's helped me in the job.
Thanks. And Maureen.
Well, I started teaching about 40 years ago. I was a classroom teacher, and from there I went to work in special education. That's where my heart is. I was the district coordinator in Maple Ridge for children with severe behavior and mental health conditions. And so that was 7 high schools and 26 elementary schools to coordinate those programs. I learned a lot. And from there, I moved into a new role in the district, which is the coordinator for social responsibility, because I felt that helping behavior kids come into the system and find their place was a disservice if the community and the culture of the schools wasn't quite ready for them, and if they were still using models of punishment. We were working against one another, and so they created a position called social responsibility. That was a turning point for me, because I realized then that there was more I wanted to do. It led me to SFU. I was the coordinator of the teacher education program there, working specifically in Indigenous education, looking at decolonization of schools.
To wrap up.
Wrap up, okay. And then BCTF, doing mediation in the field for teachers who are challenged.
Thanks, Maureen. Next we have Kristen.
Thank you. Well, I'm a mother. I'm a single parent of 3 kids, 6, 7, and 13. I'm a graduate student researching truth and reconciliation in this particular region from a socio-political, anthropological perspective. I currently work for the Justice at Work project. It's a collaboration between the Single Mothers Alliance of BC and UBC. We're collecting and analyzing qualitative data across the region of BC, to raise awareness and influence pandemic-related policy development, centering inclusive policies and practices, and addressing systemic barriers, and supporting a framework of sharing power and decision-making. I'll stop talking. Thank you.
Thanks, Krista. Yeah. And last but not least, Dale.
Thanks. Yeah, I spoke a little bit to my volunteer experience in the district and the scope of work in nonprofit. But I think at the end of the day, what I bring this time around, those years gave me an understanding of what it means to be vulnerable and the kinds of supports and the kinds of creativity needed to address those needs and kind of close the gap for those who are vulnerable. But this time around, I was elected in 2018, started drinking from the fire hose to really understand what this scope of work is, and it's been a bumpy term to say the least. With the passing of Jackie Timothy and going to a by-election and COVID and one unprecedented event after another, it has been a bumpy term. So this go around, something I'm most excited about really is putting together as a part of a team a fantastic strategic plan. There's no question, anyone who's ever worked in nonprofit or been affiliated with any, you learn how to be collaborative. You learn that you have to work together in order to achieve your goals. And so this time around, for me, I think just a solid understanding as a baseline is my biggest contribution initially.
Great, thank you. All right, so our next question is, could you give some examples of how you have spoken up or would speak up to advocate for public education? And we'll start with Kirsten.
Oh my goodness, that's a hard question for me. I think for me it's at this stage of life, being a single mom and doing research and all of that, it's more in terms of doing the research, doing the learning for myself and sharing that with other people. Thanks.
Great. Next we have Jacqueline.
I would say a lot of my speaking up thus far until I got on the board would be as in my PAC mom role, and having those discussions, especially at the district PAC table, where we are sitting with the superintendent, and he's bringing things to the table for feedback from parents, and so we've had heated discussions at DPAC meetings before, and I'm not afraid to have more heated discussions if I feel strongly about something, and so yeah, I'd say that's probably my biggest history thus far as BPAC.
Thanks. Next would be Scott.
Can you repeat the question just quickly?
Yeah. Can you give some examples of how you would speak up for public education?
Sure. I'm doing one right now. We have labor shortages in this community, severe ones. They're affecting multiple sectors. We've formed a partnership group that includes the 3 local governments, Coahoma Regional District and the city. Includes School District 47 and Vancouver Island University, Work BC, and the province has come to the table as well. And we're working together on formulating a labor force development strategy so we can create those, we can try and fill those opportunities in the community. Education is a fundamental part of that strategy. It's important that the opportunities are there for students to learn and gain the skills they need to fill the workforce needs or take advantage of those opportunities that are available for them in the community. So I'm a strong advocate for education, and I've partnered with the school district many times in the past professionally on programs. I think back to the last labor gap analysis we did in 2005, which led to the birth of the dual credit programs. The partnership between VIU and School District 47, which has led to a high degree of employment for students that took advantage of those programs.
Great, thank you. And next would be Dale.
I think Jonathan, can you just read the question one more?
Yeah, so examples of how you would speak up for public education or advocate for
Yeah.
public education.
Okay, so, speaking to experiences in PAC and DPAC, that's definitely, in the early days of it. In nonprofit, being involved in groups like the Early Years Planning Table and then working with the IU to put together, an education program that made sense for our community to address some labor shortage. I think I made a presentation to Rotary about the importance of why public education and the foundation of it is important to everyone. And I think that watching this election unfold with kind of a different lens, being part of it, I realized that we need a stronger commitment to sharing with everyone why education matters to everyone. And I commit to trying my best to make sure everyone has a better understanding of that. One example is, to watch the droves of people that turn out for the Chamber of Commerce events for candidates, and then not so much for the school district. So we take a back seat. And at the end of the day, we are providing the foundation for those who will one day take care of us, one day build our homes, one day grow our food, and those things matter and they're important. So I commit to that.
Thanks. And Marie?
I think that the opportunities are there to help people better understand public education. We have gone through change. We will be going through some pretty dramatic changes. The new curriculum is an indication of that. And I think that there is a misperception. People have gone through public education and they know their own experience. But I think that there's a role to play in helping people understand where education is and where it's going to go in the future, so that parents can be part of the decision making. They can be part of the planning for the community and for kids, and that takes advocacy. You have to advocate for public education if we want it to be strong. And I've done it my entire life, and I really cannot see not doing it for the rest of my life.
Thanks, and Rob?
I don't know if anyone else here in this room was a student in the 2000s when there were massive public education cuts. I was a student. I felt that, my family felt that, my siblings felt that, my peers felt that. And so I've always been really passionate about public education. I'm a BCGU union member, and so often I stand with BCTF when they have calls on different governments to put more funding into public education. As a parent, before I became a trustee, even though my kids were quite young, I did talk to teachers about some of the struggles that they had in the system, and so I would speak to, my avenue, who I work for, I'd speak to my boss about what I was hearing, and so that was one way I could advocate. And then, just in the past year and a half at the board table, I've had the opportunity with other trustees to really advocate for much needed funding to public ed.
Thanks. Speaking of, addressing the struggles that some of us face in working in public education, what are some of your recommendations for how the district could alleviate the need for remedy, which is the ways we try and address violations of the agreements on class size and composition? So, ways the district could alleviate the need for that. And we'll start with Dale.
That's a good question. At the end of the day, I think that in order for the district to really consider how best to address a need, they need to fully understand that need. And so for me, I think the answer to that question at this point is communication is the foundation of addressing all issues. And so maintaining good, open communication, ongoing, and maintaining solid relationships, and just having the respect to be able to be approachable and open and willing to listen and hear and understand and address together.
Thanks. And then Kirsten.
Can you just repeat the question?
Yeah, so how would you recommend the district alleviate the need for remedy? So those are the solutions that are put in place to address when, there's class sizes that have, classes that are too big or have too many students that have individualized education plans and maybe very specific needs and that sort of thing.
Yeah, okay, so in terms of like the class size and composition, I think at the board level, making this a priority, like, and Dale said too, like this holistic understanding of issues, so acknowledging the relationship between teaching conditions, like class size and composition, and how that impacts students. And then again, I think this would be an issue for advocacy because some of the limitations there and the fact that this continues to come up as an issue is a symptom of underfunding and the province's political will and priorities. So advocating for the importance of public education to be made a priority at the board level, at the provincial level. Yeah, thank you.
Then Maureen.
Yeah, the class size and composition is incredibly complicated, and there are thousands of classrooms around the province that are in violation. Remedy is not a solution. I think that we have to look at the big picture here. When you look at the numbers, it makes no sense. If you have a classroom with 26 students and the percentage of kids that are coded in Powell River, 18%. 18% of 26 is almost 5 students. You're automatically over the designation that has been legislated. We have a huge problem that is a systemic problem, and it's not going to be solved by remedy. It's going to be solved with the ministry looking at reorganizing and rethinking special education. The ministry is now looking at adjusting funding for students who are on the autism spectrum. That is going to have a huge impact in classrooms, and it's just rippling down and it's landing in teachers' laps. And I think we have to push it back upstream and start to put pressure on the systems that have the money to fund a different model of public education.
Then Jacqueline.
Well, I really hate going after Maureen on this question. Thanks, Maureen. I agree with Maureen. I do think it's an advocacy issue with the province that we do need to be talking about more funding. It's not as easy as just spreading it out. We don't have the space. We don't have enough. The size of our schools isn't enough that we can just be adding more classrooms and spreading those students that have the higher needs into other classrooms. So it is about an advocacy for additional funding from the province.
And Rob.
As I understand it right now, I don't believe class size is an issue per se, but I do know that composition remains an issue, and I know class size has in other years. I'm talking specifically about this year. And I agree with what Maureen and Jacqueline have said. It's something that the board needs to address by, simple means is asking the superintendent to prepare a report about what the numbers are, number of IEPs, etc., and then the board figuring out what they can do. I think that boards of education have a responsibility to ensure that there aren't violations, but unfortunately across our province there are. And so I think that does involve advocacy to the province, to the Ministry of Education, Childcare, and also bringing the matter up in the form of, it could even be a form of a motion at our school trustee AGMs. Thanks.
And finally, Scott.
Yeah, this is the problem going last because everyone's. But I think Jacqueline and Maureen has hit the nail on the head here. This is a difficult issue, really complicated. But the ultimate responsibility is the Ministry of Education. Our role as trustees is to be advocates and to send that message, and send that message strongly. I've had the I don't know, call it the pleasure, but I've taken on the province and other areas in the past, both a role provincially as a head of an association as well as professionally in my role with the city, and to tell them, the emperor has no clothes. So yeah, communication with staff is really important to understand exactly what the issue is and to be able to communicate that plainly and clearly to the province that they need to step up. I think they need to step up on funding for education overall, to tell you the truth, because they're not doing the job, no matter which party's in power.
Right. Okay, so we'll shift a little bit from questions of advocacy and the sort of the provincial scope to more locally. And let's start with truth and reconciliation. So what can the board do to support the recommendations and calls to action of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission here where we live? And we'll start with Rob.
I was writing the question down. Truth and reconciliation is really vitally important to me. I'd love our board, I think that we do, but I'd like to strengthen even more our relationship with the Tla'amin Nation. I said in my campaign in 2021 that I wanted to see the relationship of our board and the Tla'amin Nation as equal partners at the table. As a self-governing nation, they are responsible for their children's education, and so we need to value that and bring that to the board table. I know that there's been conversations about, and I know in other areas of the province, there's been conversations about having a designated Indigenous trustee position, which I don't think is necessarily a bad idea. I think that would be advocacy to the province. I don't believe boards of education themselves can create those spaces, but I would be supportive of it. But yeah, I think that in all the work that we do as trustees, we need to center Indigenous learners. I think when we develop our strategic plan, we need to make sure that the Tla'amin Nation is at the table chatting with us and putting in their input. Thanks.
Thanks. And Maureen is next.
I think truth and reconciliation is complex. Reconciliation is not a series of actions. Reconciliation is a disposition, it's an attitude, and it's something that the settler population has a responsibility to look within themselves and look at the relationships we have with our neighbors and come to understand it differently. We have to see ourselves in terms of our privilege. In public education, we can do things like not have First Nations kids come to school and have to adapt to a colonized model. We should have a model that really does provide a space for them to be who they are. Right now, they're split between their culture and fitting into a colonized culture, and that's not fair. I think that we can do better. When you have kids coming from an oral culture and you measure their competency according to how well they can do written output, that's not fair. There are many things that we can do, some of them small, some of them systemic.
Thank you. And Dale is next.
Yeah, I think there's no question that it's an important conversation to have, and I think our district started having it a long time ago. And unfortunately, that's not detailed in our strategic plan, and we do recognize that was a bit of a miss, but that doesn't mean the work wasn't happening. So I think over this term, hiring a director of Indigenous education, and then all of the support roles underneath that director, and the IEG from language from K to 12. I think a number of programs that we had, traditional skill builders is one great example. I think bringing a connection to land and that true connection of the core of some Indigenous learning and bringing that to all students, and recognizing the land that we live on, and how it matters to all of us to stay connected to the land. I think that every classroom does a fantastic job with all kinds of activities centered around truth and reconciliation, and I wouldn't even begin to do it any justice to try and cover any of that here. But I think that we are making great strides in making information available. Jessica's newsletter is one of those examples, but it is a fantastic thing to continue to explore. Thank you.
Thanks, Dale. Scott?
Yeah, reconciliation starts with listening, really. It's Maureen spoke about it quite well. We've got to sit down and, yes, have a conversation, but we have to listen first about what their needs are. I think the school district's done an admirable job in trying to to service or provide components, but actually I love the idea of creating a system based more on the traditions of the nation and Indigenous peoples, something that's not quite set in the colonial setting. But yeah, no, again, going back, it's a matter of conversation, understanding what their needs are, and how we can help and work together to make sure that they're just as successful as everyone else.
Thank you. Then we would have Jacqueline.
Yeah, I think that we definitely need to embed it in our strategic plan for the next 4 years. That is definitely something that was missed in the last one. But as Dale said, there were a lot of advancements that we did make, and I think the reality is that we're not driving a speedboat, we're driving a ferry, and so it takes a while to turn the boat. So I think that there's plans in place, and there's way more things that need to be done, but we do need to be listening to what they tell us that they need. That we shouldn't be telling them what we're going to do for them. We need to know what they want from us.
And finally, Kristen.
This will be hard to talk about in 1 minute, but everyone shared really well. I think spending, definitely in the strategic plan, a dedicated, well-thought direction rooted in relationship and listening. I think from my perspective, we're just still very much at truth, and so I think also dedicating some time to truth, and I know we're incorporating some of that through curriculum. But there's a lot of conversations surrounding all of this and how things are implemented, and how do we do things in a good way, because sometimes these things can be delivered with good intentions and still can cause a little bit of harm. It's just, I get really excited about this question, so my mind is everywhere. I think just remaining open, there's the flag thing. I'll just try and finish this really quick. Not trying to ease the discomfort of this learning process. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, and I do acknowledge that the 1 minute answers in the format of this, it's a very colonial structure. It's not very much, honoring the process of discourse and dialogue among our, among sort of Indigenous traditions. So maybe that's something we can think about and think about how to move forward in reimagining even the format of a public forum and how to decolonize that. So thank you for that. So let's talk about sex. SOGI is a hot button issue in many school board elections across the province. That's the sexual orientation and gender identity curriculum. And so what's the role of a trustee when it comes to the SOGI curriculum and sex education more generally? And so we'll start with Jacqueline this time.
I think that the role of the trustee for those things, again, is advocacy, that we need to be making sure that our district is implementing SOGI. I support SOGI. I support, I remember having a conversation when I was early on DPAC with Mr. Yule about bringing SOGI. So I do think it's about advocacy. Sorry, I'm losing myself now in my answer here, but just making sure that we are following through with it and that we keep that as a priority as well.
Thanks, and then we'll go to Dale.
I think that all students deserve to learn in a place that's inclusive, diversive, and welcoming and safe. And I think that SOGI resources, it's not a curriculum, and I know that some people get confused by that, and any resources that help our classrooms to be more accepting and tolerant of people and their differences are good resources. And I think our role as trustee is to be able to speak to that and welcome and ensure all students feel safe in their learning environment.
Thanks, and then Rob.
I'm really good friends with the chair of the Chilliwack School Board, who happens to be a big proponent for SOGI, and she shared on Instagram the other day that SOGI is not up for debate. It's in every single school district across our province. I don't think any one of us here is against SOGI, but in districts across our province, there are people that are actively running and who actively walk into schools and harass 2S LGBTQ students, and it's not okay. I've had the great opportunity this past year and a half to sit on the SOGI committee, see the great work that teachers across our district and how they're engaging with the material, and how teacher librarians are engaging with the material, and classroom teachers. And so I think as a trustee, it's just continuing to support the initiatives and fight for 2S LGBTQ students.
Thank you, Kristen.
Thank you. I'm a mother of a transgender child, and so this is also very dear to me. Happily reporting, though, that his time at Brooks so far has been fantastic, and he feels very supported. And so I think that's really, really wonderful. So I think as far as a role of trustee, I mean, the major goal is improving student achievement and well-being. And for me, that includes honoring all ways of being human, and creating a culture for equity and other things, inclusive environments, creating a culture where all students can safely express all aspects of their identity. I mean, these are foundational things to even be ready to learn for the day, you know, just belonging, safety. These are very basic needs that sounds like are being well supported here, so I'm pleased.
Thank you, and Scott.
Yeah, no, I'm a big supporter. I agree. We need to create an inclusive environment where everyone is accepting of everyone, no matter how they like to express themselves, and make them feel safe in that environment. And so yeah, no, strong advocate for it, and a strong advocate. And the other part of the question I think was mentioned about sexual education in general. I think it's important that children are taught and understand. I know I deal with questions at home all the time, and I answer them honestly and upfront and not very serious manner, but you know what I mean. So it's important. Both SOGI and sexual education in general, and it needs to be taught in a way that everyone feels safe and a part of the social systems within the classroom and schools.
Thanks, and Marie.
Yeah, I think it's an issue of human rights. I think every child deserves an education. They deserve to come to a place that's safe and caring, where they have a legitimate place of belonging. And I think the board policy, the new board policy, is the sweetest thing ever. If you haven't read it, please do. I applaud the people that have done it. And now the job of the board is to ensure that the policy translates to practice in a classroom. And that is a huge leap for a lot of people. And I think we scaffold it. I call it bumping architecture. You just kind of bump it along, but we have no option. I think that is our responsibility.
Thanks. So I'm going to do one more prepared question, and then we're going to shift gears a little bit. So the last one for this section for now has to do with environmental action. You know, in the recent years, we've seen students, you know, taking to the streets, following the examples of folks like Greta Thunberg and, you know, others like Autumn Pelletier here in Canada as well. And so looking at, you know, what our students are dealing with is a world that is in crisis. Obviously, the pandemic is part of that crisis, but the climate crisis is real, and we're starting to see the effects of it more closer to home now. And so when it comes to environmental action, what is the role of the education system, and specifically as a trustee, how could you support that, or what's your role in that? And we'll start with Scott.
Yeah, I think I mentioned this in one of the questions that we've gotten from one of the publications. I like what the school district's been doing. I fully agree that we should do everything we can to ensure that we reduce our carbon footprint as an organization and make sure the funding is available to do so properly and as quickly as possible. I feel that we should also be doing whatever we can within curriculum to allow students to address the issue as well and learn more and understand the impacts it's going to have on our planet and our society moving forward.
Thanks, and Kirsten.
Thank you. For me, actually, this ties into to the same ideas about truth and reconciliation. So this might be a bit different, but I would be very supportive and encouraging of programs and initiatives that shift the worldview of land to one of being in reciprocal relationship with, because that really changes sort of the dominant way of even seeing land and resources as something to be used and exploited, to something that nurtures us and we nurture it. And so I know there's a lot of good work, there's a lot of other policy items and other groups doing really good work. So I think incorporating some different worldviews from dominant culture and listening to some of the amazing students already doing some really fabulous work.
And Rob.
I think the role that trustees play in this, well, one is we have a outdoor learning and sustainability advisory committee. And so I don't know if folks know, but trustees are all appointed to various committees. There's board committees, community committees, etc. And so a trustee would be assigned to that committee. They would be the representative. And so it would kind of be the responsibility of other trustees to support that work that's being done. I'm really encouraged by all the outdoor education programs we have in our district, like LEAP, the Outdoor Learning Center. A lot of teachers are engaging in place-based education, our outdoor classrooms. And then I think the other thing we can do is if it's not being talked about on a larger level across the province, we can bring forward policy at BCSTA events. But yeah, I think that there are good steps that have been taken by every level of individuals in our district. I'm encouraged by, there's been facility upgrades to reduce carbon footprint, solar panels installed. Those are just little things, but yeah, we can also do bigger things too.
Thanks, and Dale.
Yeah, I think, each of the people who've spoken have touched on some important elements. I think as trustees, we have a responsibility to reduce our carbon footprint. And Rob mentioned some of the projects, and even installation of solar panels and reduction of water usage through plumbing upgrades. Things like that matter, and I think we have a responsibility to set the tone for projects like that in our capital plan. In terms of supporting students, supporting green initiatives brought forward by students. We did pilot a waste management system that was student-led, and so continuing to support projects like that matter. I think also supporting active transportation and other modes of transportation to get to and from school, and reducing footprint on a personal level, and also maintaining good physical and mental well-being. Rob pointed out all of the outdoor activities, and I think Kristen kind of led off on that connection to land, and back to the worldview position of connection to land, and some other ways we do that is through landed learning program, for example. Yeah, thanks.
Thanks, and Jacqueline.
Yeah, I think Dale and Rob gave a good summary of the initiatives that are already in place and that we definitely need to be continuing. I think that this is an opportunity for our board to which I don't think we typically have done, at least in the 18 months that I've been sitting on it. We don't, and that's, to be fair, because we're all learning, but it is to reach out to the province and to reach out at a higher level to the BC, the SDA, to be talking about these things and making motions at the AGM. I think that as we develop as a board, that those are things that will be more plentiful and things that we're more comfortable with doing as we are comfortable with the role.
Thanks, and Marie.
One of the things that concerns me around environmental curriculum is the way it's delivered. 50% increase in children coming into emergency hospital for issues around anxiety. It is a huge problem, and childhood anxiety is increasing. When we're talking about the environment, we are in a crisis situation. And to lay that on kids, we have to be very careful that we put them in a position where they see a place that they can advocate for change. If they feel that they are involved in a way that is solving a problem, it strengthens them. If we give them information that overwhelms them, I think it creates anxiety. And so that's part of the concern that I have, because I think this conversation is going to be in the middle of every room in the district. It has to be. And how we handle it will be a conversation at the district level.
Thanks. And so acknowledging the holistic aspects of this and trying to be mindful of my audience as a teacher, before we start passing the mic around for you to ask questions, which I'll explain in a minute, I'd like to invite everybody just to stand up and stretch for a minute and turn around if you want to stretch.
This is actually pretty cool. Hello.
And we will try and wrap up around 8:30 so people can stick around and mingle and chat and talk to the candidates as well. But we want to just kind of finish the sort of question asking formal part of it. So if you're okay, we'll proceed. Thank you. All right, so Sarah Campitelli here, who's also one of the teachers helping organize this. She has a wireless mic she'll be able to bring around. We're encouraging you to ask questions, and what we'll do is we'll give you a chance to ask your question. Please make it a question and not, like a lengthy statement. And then I'm going to use the same random order to give all the candidates a chance to respond. And so yeah, if you see her, just flag her down. She'll bring around the mic. If people don't have questions, we have many more. But I wanted to stop for a minute and give people here a chance to ask questions as well.
Angela Young Vilji. Angela Young Athnam. Hi, I'm a teacher in SD47. I'm in the Indigenous Education Department, and thank you so much for your insights. One thing I'm interested in knowing is individually, what do you see as your number one or top two priorities if you become a trustee in the next board? Your one or two priorities or pet projects, if you will.
Thanks. And we'll start with Kirsten.
Oh, it's hard going first. I think for me it would be truth and reconciliation work, which might be, looking at existing policy to uncover implicit bias. That could mean a lot of things, but centering relationship and all the holistic ways of achieving doing truth in a good way and moving toward reconciliation creating a culture that can sustain those types of conversations. Thank you.
Thanks, and Dale.
Thanks, Jonathan. My vision for this school district is a space where every student, teacher, and family can feel supported. I think that one of the biggest issues facing our students and their families is poverty, and I think we're going to have to get creative about how we help to close the gap and meet needs for students and families. I'm reluctant to say any pet projects moving forward. We've already begun some work around addressing seamless day, for example, creating childcare spaces, offering education in a way that makes sense to people, helping with food programs and trying to ensure equitable access to healthy food for all students in the district. And I think that there's going to be a number of ways that we can continue to address those needs. For me personally, I go home and I turn on the music, and I would love to see different kinds of music. We're so fortunate in Colorado to have such diverse talents when it comes to music in our community, Cathalmu, Prisma, things like that, but I think there's room for more. That's my answer.
Marie.
I think we're at a point of absolute excitement in the district. When I think about going forward, we have all the elements. We have a new policy that sets a foundation that's incredibly progressive. We have staff at the district level, new staff that are doing absolutely amazing things in terms of resources and curriculum. We have a new communications person, which was an area that I think that the district wanted to focus on. And we have an incredibly gifted teaching population in Powell River. And so I'm looking at where do we go from here? The possibilities are limitless. I think about an academic version of Prisma. What would it be like if we brought the best in the world together to Powell River to have conferences that looked at marine life, looked at biology, looked at all of the elements that we have sitting in our labs? We could do teacher conferences. We could make this a place where people want to come to really learn how to work well with our neighbors, how and what decolonization could look like in a public education system.
Thank you, and Scott.
Yeah, listen, I think I've been pretty upfront in my materials that we're a growing school district. Enrollments are up. We have to do something about the state of our infrastructure. I know Mr. Landy's here, but I talked to another former principal in the district who's referred to Edge Hill as I won't say it, not a nice place. That needs, we've been applying a lot of Band-Aid solutions, and I appreciate it. And this isn't against the school district. This is the Ministry of Education thresholds they set for when a school needs to be replaced or needs a complete refurbishing and remodeling. This is important to you as teachers. You want a great place to go to work in, right? You want a great place that students can learn in. We need to do something about funding from the ministry to address the aging infrastructure we have so that we can deal with staffing and space issues and have the kids have a great place to go to school in. James Thompson's another school that needs some significant work where most of our, I believe, Indigenous students attend. That's a catchment area for Coahoma. And look at what we're sending them to. I know, sorry. I have another one, but I'm out of time.
Thank you. And we'll go over to Rob.
Thank you very much for the question. I think immediately our board needs to get working on a strategic plan. And then, I don't know if anyone else is feeling their wallets are a little thinner lately, but I think socioeconomic issues are that our families are facing, and ergo our students, with the increased cost of living. And so I think as a board we need to talk about what's that looking like. I think there has been good movement around food programs, after school and before school, the Just Before program for preschoolers. But I think in all of this we need to ensure that we're centering a decolonial lens, an inclusive lens, and truth and reconciliation. So those would kind of be my immediate things that I would hope that our board can get started on.
Thanks, and Jacqueline.
I would say that my focus is, and probably always will be, just on the most vulnerable learners that we have in our district. So children, youth in care, Indigenous students, children with support needs, those will always be who I'm thinking of when I'm making decisions. And so I think that keeping them at the center of all of our decisions and all of our planning will be something that I'll be continuing on.
Thank you. All right, Sarah's got the mic. Put up your hand if you'd like to ask a question.
Thank you. My name is Trish Coxedge. With respect, Jonathan, I want to give you a little bit of background, just a bit. I was trained as a teacher. I did that for a while. I have 6 children. I was at my children's, I was at the PAC at my children's school. I was the chair of DPAC, and I was on BCC PAC for a few years. Right now, I have children in the education system here and grandchildren. Nothing much has changed in decades. I have been involved with education, our whole family has, in a lot of ways. I look around, this frustration and anger at no one here. I really appreciate the people who have come, but they pack the mayor's candidates, they pack the councillors' candidates' meetings, and where are they? It's the education system that is so critical, because our mayors, our councillors come out of the school system. And unless we really involve the community in the education system and what we want to see happen in this community and as part of the world, we need to do better. So I would like to know from each of you candidates, what are you going to do to involve the community to fill this room instead of having most of the seats empty?
Thanks, Trish. All right, Jacqueline, just start.
I wish I had the answer for that. I as a fellow PAC mom, you know how hard it is to get parents even to come to PAC meetings. So I think the reality of the world right now and how overwhelmed people are feeling, the level of anxiety, we may be asking too much of people to be packing the theater, multiple nights. I think that hopefully there's lots of people watching on the live stream, so I will hope that that's happening. I think that engaging with community, I think we did hire a director of communications, and the idea is not just to be putting information out, but to be gathering information back in a way that nobody really on staff was trained to do before. So that is a very specialized way to work, and so I think we were all very excited when she came on.
Thank you. And Scott?
Yeah, actually, Jacqueline's right. I think it comes down to communication. How do you engage the public and get them interested and involved? And I'm glad to hear that there's a director of communications on board. Now, I haven't met them yet, but I think I communicated with them just about a month ago on some questions. But yeah, no, we really need to engage the public more. Everyone has a role to play in seeing that we have the best education system possible in this community. As you mentioned, it is the foundation of the future of the community, and there should be more interest. And so, yeah, I think there's a number of ways that we can engage better, and thankfully there's a professional on board now, and we can work with them to try and make sure we're getting the feedback and the engagement we need, and that we get people to give us that feedback and engagement.
Thank you. Maureen?
Well, I think we could start by engaging parents legitimately in public education and move them beyond hot dog sales. Their voice is important, and we need a chair at the table for them. I would hope that we could have conversations in each of the regions in Powell River, because Texada, south of town, north, each of the districts is so unique. They all have different needs. They all have different hopes for public education. And I think community-based educational forums, informal conversations, so they actually feel that their voice carries back to the board and matters, would be a place to start.
Thank you. Dale?
Yeah, I think Jacqueline hit the nail on the head with our excitement around our new communications director. Certainly, if anyone follows any of our social media, you can tell at a quick glance that there's a lot more interest in some of the things being shared now than there was even a few short months ago. Communication matters. At the beginning, in a couple of questions, I pointed out, how much I believe that it's important for everyone to pay attention to education, and committed personally to having that conversation. I have had it a number of times. It is frustrating, and I reject the suggestion that people don't care. I think they just don't know why they care, and I think that comes down to communication and conversation to remind people why public education matters to them, regardless of age.
Thank you. And Kristen?
Yeah, thank you for your question. I think Maureen touched on this a little bit, and you did say a lot, but one of the things you shared was nothing has changed over these years. I'm biased as a qualitative researcher, but I'm very interested in lived experience, in guiding how we develop policy and goal setting and all of that. We need to really take a close, holistic look and listen to and learn from the rich and robust qualitative information that comes from the lived experience. And so when we are developing policies and such, there's no discrepancy between what the policy says, which is basically we're stating a value, and what happens on the ground. And my time is up. Thanks.
Thank you. And I will note as well that while we've been having some issues with the live stream tonight, we're going to try and make sure that the recording is available online that can be shared afterwards as well for if you want to review it, but also to share with people that haven't been able to attend tonight, and hopefully others will get a chance to hear some of the conversation that's happened. Is there another question?
Can I answer that? I didn't get a chance to answer that.
Did I miss you, Rob? Sorry, I totally skipped you. Yes, you can.
Thanks, Trish, for your question. I'm totally on board with Maureen. I think that as a board, we need to be proactive and not reactive. It's not enough to just sit at a board table and say, we have open public meetings and we have an open committee of the whole, and people come because some of our meetings are in the middle of the day starting at noon, and our other meetings start at 4 o'clock. And I'm a parent. I know what most parents are doing at 4 o'clock. They're bringing their kids around to different events in our community. And so it's difficult because we have to be aware of our role. I don't think individual trustees can go out into the community, but I think as a board, we can go out into the community. We have schools where meetings can be hosted. There's community halls that we can go to have our meetings, and absolutely right. Like I hear from people all the time, like, where are the trustees when it comes to Texada? And so I think helping the community understand our role and getting out there and having those conversations is vital.
Thanks, Rob. Was not an intentional oversight. Any more questions here in the audience? Just wave at Sarah. She'll bring you the mic.
Hi, I'm Nikki. I'm a grade 12 student at Brooks currently. I work along the community, and what I'm noticing a lot is a lot of the Brooks off-site students don't have much of a connection to Brooks. So I'm wondering if you have any ideas on bridging the gap between the two learning locations, I guess.
Yeah, so it's a question about there's Brooks students off-site at another site with an alternate learning environment, and then the Brooks students on campus here. And I think Nikki's asking about the disconnect and how to help them stay more connected, something like that. Yeah, so, and we'll start with Dale.
Thanks. I think it's a great question. I guess maybe somewhere to start with that is to kind of gauge the interest. And I think, again, that boils down to communication. So having an opportunity to reach out and understand what could be offered or what is offered at Brooks that might be of interest to the students at an alternate location, and to see where that interest takes that situation.
And Scott?
Yeah, sorry, we're referring to the alternate school that's at Ocean View, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, yeah, Dale's right, you know, that conversation has to be had with those students and to judge their comfort level and what is at Brooks that would appeal to them, that they'd like to be here with the rest of the population. So yeah, definitely, again, it comes down to communication, having the conversation and listening and understanding what kind of solutions you can create.
Thank you. And Jacqueline?
Yeah, I would agree that definitely for some of the students that are at Bob, there's a reason for them to be over there, and that maybe that there shouldn't be a connection with Brooks at this point. They do share the same principle. I think that asking Ms. Marshman how more services could probably be accessed through Bob would be beneficial. I do think I agree with you that there is a disconnect. It sometimes feels like Bob is all on an island on their own. And so making them feel still part of the student body is an important thing. But so I think that, I think that's a conversation we need to have with Ms. Marshman and see what ideas she may have.
Thank you. And Kristen?
Sorry.
I don't have much more to add that's been shared. Yeah, just listening, understanding the need and the wishes, and how to facilitate bringing a solution, a creative solution or otherwise. Thanks.
Thank you. And Rob?
Thanks for the question. I agree. There's folks have kind of already said what I would be on board for. I know often the district will do kind of like a scan of like how are students feeling and how are students, how do they feel about certain things. And so maybe asking of the superintendent to see if we can get a capture of how students are feeling, and if they're feeling disconnected, then I think the board can kind of monitor what conversations are being had in order to bridge that disconnect.
Thanks. And Marie?
I used to teach in a store, it's called Storefront, and it's for those kids that didn't do well in the regular system, and so it was an offsite. Every single student in that program was there because they could not find their place at a high school. And they basically came to the alternate program because they felt that they could find a place where they belonged. When I looked at the 2019 statistics online for the district, which are the newest that they have, the sense of belonging, less than 40% of students that were surveyed in Pell River felt they belonged. That is, that's a problem, because belonging is foundational to a good educational system. And so I would go to the alternate kids and sit down with them and say, what is it you need to feel that you belong? It's not a question that the adults in the system can answer. It's a question that we need to take to the student body, because they will hold the answers for us.
Thank you. Any other audience questions? Any other questions from folks? If not, if you're still thinking about it, I have a couple more questions I'll ask, and we can come back if people have thought of a question they want to ask. We have one here from our colleagues in QB, the Support Workers Union. And the question is, what's your view on public-private partnerships? And we'll start with Marie.
I think public education should be fully funded. If public education was fully funded, we would have no need for private enterprise and profit-making businesses. It is a distraction. It's a distraction for leadership, it's a distraction for the board, and I would say I would put my energy into advocating the money we need instead of peddling ourselves around doing private enterprise.
Next, Jacqueline.
And thanks, Maureen. I agree. I agree that public education should be fully funded, and so I do think that we have benefited from some of the money-making ventures that have happened in the district, but I don't think we should have to. I think we should be fully funded by the province.
Okay, Dale.
Yeah, I agree. Obviously, public education should be fully funded. That being said, the province would never see fit to fund an outdoor learning center, and our students definitely benefit from projects like that. So I think to close the door on opportunities to support the betterment of our community and students, I'm not sure that I would be so willing to do that. So I think, there's a balance, and I think we need to find that.
And Rob.
Yeah, I agree. I don't support public-private partnerships. Public education should be fully funded. And I just want to read this. I actually had written this down in my notes that got distributed, but I had to cut this part out. I read a report that stated that funding to private schools is growing faster than public schools in BC. $500 million of public money and subsidies goes to private schools. It's not an attack on private schools. At the same time, I am concerned that funding to public schools is not increasing at the same pace as private schools. And so I think chronic underfunding has always been an issue in public ed, and we as boards need to address that because we shouldn't be relying on money-generating ventures.
And Kirsten.
Well, again, I guess I don't have too much to add. I agree, public education should be fully funded. A board should be able to allocate those resources where we need and let teachers and students be in relationship with all the supports needed. I love the distinction Dale and Jacqueline made, though, too, about that balance and that these other avenues are really, really wonderful. We just shouldn't have to rely on them. Thanks.
And Scott.
Yeah, I think when the province changed the rules and allowed school districts to the opportunity to go out and generate revenues on their own, they abdicated their responsibility to publicly funding education, and it's unfortunate that happened, and it's unfortunate that I've always disagreed with them funding private schools. I think that's horrible. You want to send your kid to a private school, you pay for it. If you can afford to do it, but frankly, public education should be funded fully, and government needs to step up and do its job. It's another form of downloading. We see this over and over again. I'll tell you from the local government side, we're expected now they want us to take on ambulances and ambulatory care. It's like, because they just abdicated the responsibility there. So here we go, another example. If there's an opportunity to generate revenues in a way that isn't harmful to being fully funded publicly, then yeah, do it. But I'd much rather see the Ministry of Education live up to the responsibilities.
Thank you. All right, we have time for another question from the audience. If there's somebody that's come up with one, yeah, go ahead.
Great, it's good to hear all of you speak tonight. I'm a homeschooling parent, and so I do not have any children in the system. We gave up on the system a long time ago. My question to you is, since Brooks School ranks really, really low on the Fraser Institute report card, I'm wondering, what are you and can you do to encourage academic achievement, as well as, or rather, I should say, agenda-driven education?
Okay. Thank you. We'll start with
I can't remember entirely the question, but what initially came to my mind was there's a lot of things we can do, but one of them is how do we measure success and achievement? And yeah, I think there are a lot of things we can just shift a bit so that it is more inclusive of and reflective of the way humans learn best. And so I don't weigh heavily on things like those measurements and the way they do that ranking. I don't think it's accurate, really. It can't be. It's very exclusive and misses a lot of really important data.
You stole my words. I was going to say the same thing. Sometimes I say, looking at the Fraser, like again, I know I've looked at it as well, but it's akin to Googling my symptoms when I'm not feeling well. Like, I don't think it gives a good picture. But I think to your question though about kind of what can the board do, well, I think the board operates up here. We provide, we debate policy, we look at funding coming in and where it's going to go through consultation, and so I think that's kind of our responsibility, and we have to rely in a good way on our educators, our principals, our admin staff to ensure that the curriculum is being taught in the classroom. I mean, I apologize that, you know, the public education system didn't work for your kids. I hear that story from a lot.
We're completely fine. We're
Yeah.
so glad.
So yeah, but you know, for a lot of people it does. So it's, you know, you gotta have the conversation. I think that's what the board does, is we have those higher level conversations of how we can support educators and principals.
Thanks. Dale?
Yeah, I think Rob hit the nail on the head. You know, it's a snapshot, and I think Kirsten also made a really good point. In our strategic plan, that was, you know, when we built that plan, there was a lot of careful thought given into how do we measure the success of what it is that we want to do, and that's a really important piece of any strategic plan. I think that improving student outcomes, I mean, certainly that's going to be in every strategic plan. And then our district also has the complementary operational plan with a number of strategies listed there around how to change outcomes for students. But of course, that's a long game. At the end of the day, you know, it really is foundational, and building on success as you move through the years, you know, that affects all of the outcomes for students. I think that the Fraser Institute, it's unfortunate that it ranks students in that way, and I think every teacher would agree that it is not a fair reflection of what it is to measure student success.
Okay, and Maureen?
The Fraser Institute bases their measure on the FSAs, and the FSAs have absolutely no statistical reliability. Many parents opt their kids out of the FSA, so the numbers are very skewed. I think it's another example of how we measure what it means to be educated through a colonized lens.
Okay, and Jacqueline?
Yeah, I would agree that, I mean, operations decisions don't come to the board table in terms of how each individual school is functioning. I think we can listen to the staff at Brooks in particular, if that's which one we're discussing, and hear if there's things that they need, if there's different funding avenues that we could maybe have a discussion at the board table about. But yeah, I concur that I don't think the Fraser Institute is a good gauge.
And Scott?
Sure, you left me at last, and I had the first vulgarity of the evening. Fraser Institute can go screw itself. You know, seriously, I mean, those organizations, and as well as others that do all these rankings, and again, it's a snapshot based on a test, which I got my first letter asking whether I was going to exclude or not the other day. It really doesn't give an indication of how that student's doing. The teachers in the classroom know how that student's doing. They're well aware, and that's why the educators are there, and we measure success in various different forms, just like everyone else up here has said. So yeah, I don't put a lot of stock in it.
Right, thank you. So we're going to go to our last question and then wrap up and give you a chance also. I'm sure the candidates will be happy to stick around a bit if you have more things you would like to ask them about. So just to close, is there anything else that you want the community to know about who you are as a person and why you want to be a school trustee? And we'll start with Kirsten. It's random.
Oh my gosh. Oh, okay, well, let me just look here because I did have it, because I'm so nervous, okay, so I hope I haven't tripped all over my words tonight. I feel like there's this quote, I'm going to paraphrase it, but it really, for me, captures my heart as a parent and my motivation for running. And so I'll just end with it. Your most significant contribution may not be something you do, but someone you raise. And yeah, so that captures my heart as a parent and my intention for running, and it's to serve, to listen, amplify those voices that will, and our, like, board's policy will impact most. Those are the voices we need to amplify, and empower the youth of today and future generations.
Thank you. Scott?
Yeah, thanks. First off, I want to say congratulations to everyone for stepping up. Public service isn't easy, and I think from what I've heard tonight, you've got 6 great people, no matter which one of us you choose, that's going to form a great team at the school district board table to get things done. First and foremost, I'm running because of my kids and every other kid in the district. I think they deserve the best, and I want to make sure, like, the education system here has been good to my boys so far, and I want to, those teachers that have been involved, I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart. I've got one son with speech therapy issues, but he's smart as can be, and you helped him through that, and he's become a leader in the classroom, and we're raising them together, right? So thank you. My parents were teachers. I grew up in education, in an education household. I'm not going to age myself. I remember the stacks of essays and exams on the piles of them on the table each night, them marking and setting lesson plans and so on and so forth. And I have an ultimate respect for the profession. It's not easy. And so I'm here to serve. I want to listen, I want to hear the concerns, I want to do what I can as an advocate, use my professional experience at the board table to make this the system that we have here in the region the best that it can be.
Thank you. And Jacqueline?
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
Yeah, is there anything else you want the community to know about who you are and why you want to be a school trustee?
I think I've said a lot tonight. I think I am a mother. I have two teenagers who both attend Brooks, and we are also hosting an international student from Japan. We've had her living with us since January, and it's been a great experience. I think just my experience as a child protection worker and now as a supervisor really does highlight my focus on vulnerable learners, and so those people in our community that need someone to be speaking up for them, and I want to make sure that I'm at the table to ensure that they're taken into account when decisions are being made.
Thank you. Maureen?
I think we're at the start of something pretty special in the school district, and I think it's going to take a real collaborative skill, and that's the professional work that I've done, that's the training in my graduate work, is how to pull the community together so that we can find the strength in the community and collaboratively negotiate our way forward. And I think that we have the talent. I think that all of the pieces are in play, and I really cannot wait to see what happens in the school district, because we're ready to launch.
Thanks. Dale?
Yeah, I believe that public education is the single most powerful tool we have to shape our community, our students, and the world, essentially. I think that we need to recognize that learners come through our doors with a variety of diverse needs, and the learning environment is different today than it was 20 years ago, and that means that we also need to adapt in the strategies that we use to to help support students to success. I believe that it takes all of us, and it takes a collaborative approach. It takes fantastic communication, and I think Maureen's right. We are onto something, and I think our strategic plan is solid, and I'm really looking forward to the next strategic plan and building on the momentum that we've created there.
Thanks, and Rob.
I just want to say again, a big thank you to the PRDTA for putting this event together and for everyone's insightful questions. I wrote a little thing I'll just read out. For the past year and a half, I feel like I've proudly represented students and their families on our Board of Education. I've come to understand the role and responsibilities of a trustee, and I've worked well with other trustees to advocate the strategic goals of our district. I remain committed to putting students and their families first, staying accountable to the public and our educators, and ensuring sound financial decisions are made that benefit all learners. I also commit to strengthening the relationship between our board and the Tla'amin Nation in a spirit of truth and reconciliation. I'd like to keep the conversation going around grad rates, student performance, student and staff mental health, the socioeconomic issues facing our families in the district, and how we can be better prepared for student growth in our district, which is already happening. So thank you all for coming out.
Thanks, Rob. So folks, we have 5 spots on the school board. These are the 6 candidates. Give them a hand.
And thank you for all of you who did come tonight. Unfortunately, apparently our live stream was private. However, it has been recorded, so we will make sure, I'll put that on Facebook and make sure it gets out. Thank you also to the 6 of you for coming. It's absolutely marvellous to hear what you have to say. And I can only say that it's going to be hard for people to decide. It's somewhat unfortunate that 5 of you will get on and 1 of you won't. But it's great to have a contested race, and it's fantastic that you're willing to actually stand up to do this and take on this responsibility. So thank you. I'd also like to thank Zach of the Purple Folder for timing. Sarah for wandering around with the mic. And then there are some people who were in the background who actually made this possible. Jackie Dawson, the theatre manager. Ian Landy, who's been struggling with making the live stream public, and we'll make sure that we're on as well. Jason Lean for his tech support. Also, to School District 47 for arranging for us to have this wonderful facility. As soon as we knew there was going to be a contested race, the superintendent talked to me. I said, yes, we were planning on putting on a candidates forum. And right away, we were offered this facility to hold it, which is truly collaborative and fantastic. And I hope that you all have a bit of a better understanding now of what the candidates actually stand for. And thank you again for coming. If you'd like to stick around, I'm hoping the candidates, since we said we'd go till 9 o'clock and it's 8:37, I'm hoping they might stick around to chat a bit. But thank you all very much, and if you need to leave now, good night.